Hey Team Bio, welcome to today's screencast. This is a prelude to the Respiratory Lab that you're going to do in class tomorrow, where we're going to measure the amount of time that you can hold your breath after rest, after hyperventilation into a paper bag, and after exercise. Kind of interesting and fun, and in order to understand the results of the lab, hi Stephanie, you need to have a foundational understanding of why gas exchange is necessary and how gas exchange takes place in the body. So, first of all, you know the overall chemical formula for cellular respiration. We have C6H12O6 plus O2 is making CO2 plus H2O plus energy. Oops, that's not how you spell energy. Plus energy in the form of ATP. So cellular respiration is constantly consuming oxygen and producing CO2. So we need to figure out a way to get CO2 out of the body and O2 into the body. And that's exactly what respiration does. So yesterday, your screencast, we talked about the structure of the heart and the two loops of the heart, the pulmonary loop and the systemic loop. And here is, I'm going to talk to you about how gas exchange takes place, because the heart is just a pump moving blood from the body to the lungs and back to the body again. But gas exchange actually takes place in the lungs and in the body. So let's set this up. We'll start at the heart. With oxygen, poor blood coming to the lungs through the pulmonary artery. So, whoa, where did that go? Shoot. So, the pulmonary artery, or arteries, are bringing oxygen, poor blood, to the lungs, and this blood is rich in CO2. And inside of your lungs, you have what are called a network of capillaries. Capillaries are tiny little blood vessels that are one single red blood cell thick. And the capillaries extend over these structures that kind of look like grapes that are called alveoli. Alveoli are connected, are full of air. They're like tiny little sacs of air. And when you breathe in, these sacs fill up with fresh air. And when you exhale, you push air out of your body. It's actually creating areas of high and low pressure inside of your lungs, and that's how gas is moving in and out. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so how does oxygen get into your blood and CO2 get out of your blood? Well, it actually just is simple diffusion. Simple diffusion from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So the carbon dioxide levels in your blood are high, and the oxygen levels are low relative to the airspace. So oxygen diffuses down into the blood, and carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood into the airspace of the lungs. And then now the blood has been oxygenated, and it travels back to the heart through the pulmonary vein. So this is going to go back to the heart here through the pulmonary vein, and then the heart is going to pump that blood to the body through the heart and out of the aorta, which you can see is right here in this human figure, the aorta, and that blood is going to travel all around the body, up to the head and the arms and the legs and to the tips of your toes. And again, there's going to be a network of capillaries, just like there were in your lungs, where gas exchange is going to take place within your body. Here we have oxygen-rich blood and CO2 poor blood, which is going to give up its oxygen. So once again, we have simple diffusion. Simple diffusion.
All right, so, hey guys, I have snacks.
From an area of high concentration to low, but now the concentrations have been reversed. So oxygen is now high in the blood and low in the tissue, so it diffuses out of the blood into the tissue. And CO2 is high in the tissue and low in the blood, so it diffuses into the blood. And then it's moved back to the heart through your veins. The superior and inferior vena cava is where that blood is going to dump back into your heart. Okay, so that's the pulmonary and the systemic loop. But a bit about how blood is actually transported around your body. Oxygen binds to a protein called hemoglobin. Oxygen binds to hemoglobin. Your red blood cells are chock-a-block full of this protein, hemoglobin, and so then the oxygen is transported via red blood cells to all of the cells in your body and diffuses out in the capillaries. CO2 dissolves in the aqueous solution of your blood, so the watery solution. And when it dissolves in your blood, it becomes carbonic acid. Oxygen is bound to hemoglobin, and CO2 is mostly dissolved in your blood, and when it's dissolved, it forms carbonic acid. When you do something that produces a lot of CO2, like, for example, if you exercise, you perform a bunch of cellular respiration in order for the energy you need to exercise, to contract your muscles. So your CO2 levels go way up when you exercise. Therefore, there's a lot more carbonic acid in your blood. So carbonic acid levels rise. So meaning your blood is becoming more acidic, so the pH of your blood is actually dropping. It's becoming more acidic. It drops below, well, it doesn't actually drop below 7, but it starts to fall. Okay. So there's a relationship between your blood pH and your respiratory rate, your impulse to breathe. The primary control over your respiratory rate comes from chemoreceptors in your brainstem. Chemoreceptors are little receptors that sense the pH of your blood. So, when CO2 levels increase, carbonic acid increases in your blood, the pH of your blood decreases, and this sends a signal. This is sensed by the chemoreceptors in your brain, which causes your respiratory rate to increase. So, when you produce a bunch of CO2, your respiratory rate, or how fast you're breathing, increases. And this is the pathway by which that happens. So, in lab tomorrow, we are going to explore what happens when we rest, how long we can hold our breath. So, when does the impulse to breathe become overwhelming? After we rest, after we exercise, after we hyperventilate, and after we hyperventilate into a paper bag. And we're going to explain the results of the lab using this pathway where we talk about levels of CO2 and the acidity of our blood. Okay, that is all. See you tomorrow in class.